Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. Before we begin, please keep in mind that interpretation in English and Arabic will be available through channel number 1 for English and channel number 7 for Arabic. Additionally, as per the official UN side event rules, we kindly ask that you refrain from taking photographs. These will be handled exclusively by our team. If you are interested in obtaining photographs post-event, please provide us with your contact information and we will gladly share them with you. Thank you for your understanding. I extend my gratitude to each and every one of you for joining us today. I'm Sofia Lusikova, a human rights officer at the Geneva International Center for Justice, and I will serve as your moderator for today's discussion. In what appears to be growing times of conflict and instability worldwide, civilians are progressively at risk of violence. Human rights and international norms are increasingly under threat during times of conflict, and it is therefore crucial that more awareness of these crises be raised, in both the interest of putting an end to them now and preventing them in the future. To that end, I am honored to welcome you all to our side event titled Protection of Human Rights During Conflicts. We're privileged to have esteemed speakers with us today who have dedicated their lives to advocating for human rights and providing aid to those affected by conflict. First and foremost, allow me to introduce Dr. Raouf Salti, a logical surgeon and president of Children's Right for Healthcare. Dr. Salti has carried several missions delivering specialized medical interventions to vulnerable children, primarily in Gaza and the West Bank. Joining us alongside Dr. Salti is Mr. Ala Shalabi, president of the Arab Organization for Human Rights. Mr. Shalabi has been at the forefront of the fight for human rights in the Middle East, tirelessly advocating for justice and accountability. And from Yemen, we have Mr. Riyad al-Dubai, a human rights defender. Mr. al-Dubai has bravely monitored and documented countless human rights violations in Yemen, despite facing significant risks to his own safety. His insights into the ground realities of conflict in Yemen are invaluable as we strive to understand and address the challenges faced by its people. Together, our panelists bring a wealth of knowledge, experience, and passion to this critical discussion. Their perspectives will not only shed light on current humanitarian crises, but also offer insights into potential pathways towards peace, justice, and the protection of human rights in conflict zones. Also, please note that questions are welcome towards the conclusion of the session, so we ask that you hold them until that time. Without further delay, I am pleased to extend the invitation to Dr. Raouf Salti to deliver his remarks.
I will speak in Arabic. Thank you for inviting me to speak in this meeting on the human rights. As a representative of the CRH, the Human Rights of Children, I have searched a lot about human rights in this part of the world, and I didn't find it. I'll speak about something that is imaginary or virtual. Human rights do not exist in the Gaza Strip today, not even in the West Bank. About which right should we speak of? I'll give you the difference between people and humans. I'm a doctor. I've studied mankind, not human medical or medicine. When people are aware and become human and they start to think and they have morality, they become humans. And you can judge by yourself to classify what is happening in Gaza today. Today in Gaza we see dead people still alive. Children who have become skeletons. I saw a child in Gaza who was 16 years old. He was only 30 kilos. That's the weight of maybe a 6-year-old child. He was just a skeleton. He was just bone and skin, skin on bone. We see every day these horrendous scenes, and we are in the year 2024. Children dying, unfortunately, because of hunger and thirst, and we are just eating and drinking at our tables. In which world are we living where hunger and thirst are considered war crimes and they are being used and nobody is doing anything? I'm asking, where is humanity and where are the values? Where is morality? You, the civilized world. We have come up with the artificial intelligence, and our own intelligence has gone back decades and centuries. For the first time today, I have no words to describe what is happening in that part of the world in front of this global silence. Without exception, because anybody who wants to speak has to work. You have to act, otherwise you are a partner. In these days of the 21st century, we are writing a black page of the human history. What's happening in Palestine and in Gaza in particular is inhuman. And I'd like to go back to what I told you about the definition of humanity and humankind. It has nothing to do with human values or principles in any way, shape or form. And we only see a global silence. We, as a humanitarian non-government organization, we are fighting for the children to improve their health situation wherever they may be on this planet. However, we are facing situations that are unknown to international law. Unfortunately, the United Nations is unable to impose any resolution that respects its own charter that has been signed by all member states. We are asking, who is ruling this world today? Unfortunately, who is governing the world? The children I saw and whom I brought to Geneva, each one of them has his own or her own story and tears. You heard a moment ago to our sister Hiba and what happened to her. There are other stories. Stories that would make the hair on your skin raise. We don't know whether this is imaginary or virtual. Children who went to get water and they're bombed and buried under the rubble, and he's 16 years old and he was under the rubble. He was only 30 kilograms. His left kidney was destroyed. He lost a leg. He stayed in the hospital for treatment. He remained alive. However, he was alive and dead at the same time, in a tent, under the rain. The water that was entering into the tent, they were eating 500-gram tins for 7 people. 7 people had to eat 1 tin of 500 grams. We were unable till this very day to ensure that he has more than 1 kilo in 2 months. We had never witnessed anything like this today, and we are all seeing this and we're all silent. Gaza today is an example of the failure of the international community to stop bloodshed and the killing of children. That is the democracy, or is it an occupation of humanitarian principles according to the wishes and whims of certain countries? We, as a small association, are honored to break this silence, which we saw in every single country of the world. And even if we managed to bring out 8 children between 18 months and 16 years old, we were able to save them and their mothers, but they left their families under bombing. They are living between peace in Geneva and eating and drinking in Geneva, and between their families in the Gaza Strip who are living under the bombs and shells. Today, when there is an earthquake somewhere in the world, all the countries compete to provide assistance for those who have been harmed by the earthquake. But today, what is happening in the Gaza Strip, some countries are competing to send explosives and bombs to kill people in Gaza. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Killing people has to come to an end. Destroying humanity in the name of religion or God, who never said to any prophet to kill. Let's stop using religion as an excuse for killing. Nobody came on this planet and has the right to have a square meter of land. The land is for all. However, today, as we have seen with ISIS, Daesh, we have made use of religion and used religion as an excuse to carry out what we see today in Gaza. Unfortunately, it is high time, as I see, that we think as humans, that we think for peace, that we speak to sit together so that we can live in peace, so that our children will not feel embarrassed from us, so they won't be embarrassed from us. And here, finally, I call upon all those who have the power of decision-making in this world, this failed world, to carry out whatever is possible in terms of actions or to put an end to the bloodshedding and the killing in that part of the world, to a ceasefire, so that those people can live in dignity as others, because they are people, just as we are. No difference between us. Thank you.
Now it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Ala Shalabi to share his remarks.
Thank you. I will speak in Arabic.
The Arab Organization for Human Rights is maybe the oldest legal organization. It was founded in 1980 in the region, and it's an organization in 16 Arab countries in the form of institutions, and in Europe and other countries in the form of institutions. The most important thing is that we have important members. We have Palestinian institutions. We have the Palestinian Center, the Al-Mizan Center for Human Rights, and we have very old partners, and some of the oldest Palestinian institutions are member. Now, in view of the latest events, the history did not start on the 7th of October, but we had given analysis about the horrendous bombing, and we said there would be a possibility to see that there would be genocide we had problems with the United Nations and to discuss how resentful we were, and also we heard what the Secretary General of the United States said. They did not carry out their duties that they should have, and we have also problems with the ICJ, but we continue to work with our partners in the same path. We have renewing old work. We are working through the judicial systems. We're trying to carry out an investigation in front of the ICJ. Unfortunately, the prosecutor has not done anything in responding to our request, despite all the declarations that we have disappointed us. But we continue to work. We had a joint mission. We worked in the country of where there's the headquarters in the Arab Republic of Egypt, and we work with the Mizan Center for Human Rights, and our headquarters in Gaza has been completely destroyed, and the members there are unable to work directly. We carried out visits to some of the hospitals where there are injured people, Palestinian people, and in Egypt we visited 12 hospitals in the northern part of Sinai, which is on the border with the Gaza Strip, and next to Bursaid, and in Cairo, and in another province. So we visited 500 Palestinians in those 12 hospitals. There were about 2,000 accompanied people, but 280 of the 500 are injured. The others are sick people. The total number in all Egypt until the end of last February was 3,300 Palestinians and about 3,000 people accompanying them. But we visited 12 out of 84 hospitals. We looked into about 80 cases. We documented their cases. We got their testimonies and some of the important statistics that might be useful. Of course, we had researchers from the Mizan Center for Human Rights. Mr. Yunus, I was also there with some of our colleagues and experts who were present. And from the 9th of February to the 18th of March, the joint mission worked between the two organizations, and we also visited border places, the logistics center in Arish in the northern part of Sinai, and also some places where more than 1,000 sick people headed, having left the hospitals. We also visited certain surgical operations, and we worked with the Egyptian Red Crescent until the 1st of March. And here we're talking about 1,050 injured people who were treated in Egypt, and about 950 of those went to the Emirates and Turkey and Qatar in particular. And we have some important observations to make, that most of them who went, and there are lists, and there's a lot of pressure within the Gaza Strip, and there's a great need to provide assistance to the injured people or people who have chronic diseases, and we have to have sufficient places in the hospital so that we can absorb greater numbers who are in critical stages. But as I said, 1,050 people left Egypt until the 1st of March, and about 1,300 went to other regions. 86 cases have been documented from a criminal point of view. Amongst them, 7 were men and 31 females, and we had 47 children. Here we're talking about 100% of civilian cases who are not involved in any armed conflict. We're talking about civilians. And the total number of injured and sick people in Egypt, and then And we have to say that 75% of all these numbers are women and children. That was until the 1st of March 2024. We have 53 in Luxor, and that has to do, or makes us think how densely populated places like mosques and schools are bombed. And as Israel claims that it always sent a message to warn people that it will bomb a place before bombing. We have 10 cases of severe burn and 8 cases of fragments of shells and bombs in people's bodies, and also we have cases of paralysis. So we're talking about certain patterns. Amongst our conclusions are most of these people are civilians, and more than 75% are women and children. Most of them were in highly populated places, like, and even places that had the flags of the United Nations. So the aggressor knew that these places were densely populated with civilians, and they never received any warning to inform them that these places would be bombed. Many have been aggressed, and there was some of their families fell martyrs, and in some cases 17 members of the same family were lost in that aggression of that injured person. They all have different psychological problems, especially the children who are under the age of 15, and a lot of people have lost 4 layers of their skin, and this can only be explained by the use of unconventional weapons, and also amputation because of the bombing, and broken bones. And it appears that many of them could have been assisted if the hospitals had not been aggressed, and they could have received the proper treatment, especially during the first period after being injured. One of the best mechanisms to provide humanitarian assistance for a large number, there are the Egyptian Red Crescent has carried out immense and incredible work. 33% of the assistance was unable to enter into the Gaza Strip because of the Israeli and the dual inspection or checkpoints, and we can't accept the excuses that were given to prevent assistance from entering. But 33% of the assistance did not enter, especially the assistance that could save lives. That is to say, I can't bring in refrigerators to preserve the medicines, because the medicines have to be preserved, and you need the fridges, the refrigerator, but these were prohibited. 700 oxygen bottles were prevented from entering, and tents were unable to enter because there is a bit of lead, or there's or some components of the tents had been considered as being of dual use or usage. Even wooden boxes were not allowed to enter because these could be used for some dual purpose. And even the containers. The containers could be in wood, and they would say, no, we want plastic containers. Or if we come with plastic containers, they would say, no, we need wooden containers. So they would always remove whatever is found in the containers, which leads to the destruction of the medicines. And if they find anything that they do not agree upon, they send back the whole container. And you need about 3 to 5 days for medicine to reach the injured. Now you need 25 days for the medicine to reach the injured. The Red Cross was able to pay the expenses for the fuel, the car fuel, and the drivers, the drivers who have a lot of patience and the feeling of resistance and wanted to help. But in the end, we're talking about deliberate deterioration of the medicines and basic necessities. And when the Red Cross asked us not to take any pictures, the depot where and the occupying authorities did not want any pictures to be taken about the assistance provided. And they asked the Red Crescent, the Egyptian Red Crescent, not to take any pictures and not to mention what is really happening. More than 20 items were prohibited. Any source of energy was prohibited. A battery would be prohibited. And Egypt, that went through a huge crisis in the past months, provided 80% of the assistance. And it the Egyptian civil society was also able to provide useful assistance, and the government, but this means that there is a scarcity of assistance. We know, according to our estimates, that there is a great need for assistance because the Gaza Strip needs about 1,200 trucks every day for a month. Then we go back to the old average, which is 500 trucks a daily. We have still not been able to provide the minimum of assistance. Among the most important conclusions that the joint mission has come up with, and we might declare this in a press conference, we emphasize that there is genocide. But we have to say, what is the responsibility of the Security Council? The Security Council was unable to implement the decision taken by the International Court of Justice. This is a legal and moral obligation and responsibility. There is blood in everybody's hands. But there is an important responsibility. 153 countries who have signed a convention to prevent genocide, and Israel has not signed. Now, the convention imposes on all the countries individually and collectively to take action. Every country has the right to take initiatives to prevent genocide from taking place. You can cut off your diplomatic relations or commercial cooperation, or you can prevent weapons from reaching the occupier. And Shadid, our sister Shad, she said you can impose on sport organizations like FIFA to prevent certain countries from participating if they do not abide by international law. Therefore, we are calling upon all the legal entities in the world, the judiciaries, to work as Holland did. Holland stopped sending the F-35 components, and the parliamentarians and parliaments have to also carry out action. I will stop here, and I thank you for having given me the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Shalabi. Following that, it is my privilege to invite Mr. Riyad Al-Dubai to present his remarks.
Thank you very much to you, and thank you to the speakers and the persons attending this meeting. The working paper I'm presenting today speaks about a Yemeni case, which is an important one of the patterns of human rights violations and the violations of international humanitarian law and in Yemen. This pattern of violations has been practiced in a systematic way since the Houthis took over the political sphere in the country, and by bombing houses in Yemen. Now, a house has its unique importance in the Yemeni society, and therefore what took place in Yemen in bombing houses by the Houthi leadership and members, such bombing was systematic. It was done with predetermination. It was done insistently. Before this bombing is accompanied by the raiding of the houses or the homes to put dynamites all around the house, and such bombing is a message sent to all the opponents, the political opponents who oppose the Houthis, and they want to subject their opponents through bombing of this house. And for the Yemenis, when you bomb their houses and you basically cancel his existence, you cancel his right to property, his right to life, and this goes against the right to property. There are no legislations or constitutions or laws in Yemen, or even at the regional conventions. You do not have the right to bomb or to take away the house of somebody else, as the occupying power is doing in Palestine. And therefore the Houthis adopted the strategy of bombing the houses of their opponents as a war strategy, which is still continuous until this very date. And this strategy, the Houthi strategy, can be explained in bombing the houses of the opponents because they want to take their revenge. And this is the heritage of this pattern from their forefathers to terrorize others. And the Houthis usually bomb the homes of their opponents in order to symbolically destroy their opponents. And then the Houthi group builds their own houses on the rubbles of the former houses. As I said previously, the Houthis use homes as a way to revenge, and they carry out violations, and they have an ideology which led them to adopt a strategy of silence. Many of the opponents, many of the politicians have homes in Sana'a. More than 930 homes were bombed in Yemen. Ta'az province in the middle of the country, which is under siege for the past 8 or 9 years by the Houthis. Then Al-Bayda city came next. Now this idea of bombing homes, as I said, you cancel the identity or the right of a Yemeni to exist. And in Yemen we do not have any residential policies. We do not provide land or houses for the citizens, and therefore when your house is bombed, you have to go back to a life of zero. You start a life from, I'm young, or I claim to be young, I'm 43 years old, I work in the civil society, and maybe I can still work another 17 years, but I can never build a house. I can never start to rebuild a house, and if I do get a house, maybe from my father or from my mother, and then it is bombed, it means I will start my life from zero, from scratch. And therefore, there are violations that accompany these bombing of the homes. Of course, injury, some civilians are injured or killed. And this took place on the 19th of March in Radah city. And there are videos that have been recorded where the Houthis bombed 8 homes on the heads of their inhabitants. And the medical sources and the doctors said that there are more than 35 people, most of them women and children, who are either amongst the injured or the killed. And you can look on Twitter or on hashtag Aishta Anti Bikhair, which is one of those who remained alive. Her brother was looking for her, and this hashtag became very famous. And there are more than 6,000 Twitters where she's screaming under the rubble, asking to be rescued. And also, all the psychological and the physical problems, the shocks. Many women lost their babies. They were pregnant and they lost their babies because of those bombings. Who are responsible for these bombings? The Houthis. They adopted this strategy ever since they entered into the capital Sana'a in 2014, and until this very day, more than 930 homes have been bombed in Yemen, because these homes were owned by persons who are opponents to the Houthi ideology, their policies, the way they rule the country. Now, according to statistics of the American Center, which is a Yemeni organization for justice, the Houthis bombed more than 703 homes during March 2011 to September 2023. In addition, there is a report that says that 920 something homes and 933 private properties and other public properties were bombed in 21 provinces in Yemen. The Houthi responsibility has been proven for 930 private properties and other public, or 735 homes. And also many schools were bombed, many mosques or private properties that have to do with sports or other social institutions. And also the Houthis stole about 513 homes before bombing them in many provinces in Yemen. Now, with regards to the Yemeni provinces which have witnessed the bombing of homes, Ta'is, as I said, was number 1, where 149 homes were bombed by the Houthis. Then Al-Bayda, 124 homes, and then the province of Ed, and then Hagga and Lahd and Damar and Sana'a and Dala'. And therefore this strategy has been adopted by the Houthi group in order to subject their opponents, and this is a means to take revenge and subject others. What I would like to mention here, the examples of these bombing by the Houthis, like the home of Duhaima and the home of Al-Nafus in Radah, and the homes on the 19th of March in Radah. And what accompanies these bombings? Usually the Houthis bring photographers to take pictures of these homes as they are being bombed, and then they have a slogan. They scream their slogan, which is anti-Semitic. It is against coexistence, against religion, against values and principles of human rights. This reminds us, these violations remind us about what is perpetrated by the occupying powers in Israel, and therefore everything that are carried out by the Houthis in the Red Sea, where they say they're standing by the Gaza people. That is not true. After the 7th of October, the Houthis carried out many violations. They bombed many homes. They arrested many activist women. They arrested many of the judges who had different political opinions to them, and many human rights defenders were sentenced to death. I'll stop here and thank you for your kind attention.
Dubai. We now have around 10 minutes for questions. Can we... Oh, yes, please.
A question to Mr. Shalabi and Dr. Salti. My name is Alfred Azayas, former independent expert on international order. Why have the Arab and Muslim countries not shown more proactive solidarity with the Palestinians? Why have they not joined South Africa in the case before the International Court of Justice? Why have they not activated universal jurisdiction to prosecute Israeli officials within their jurisdiction? And why have they not broken diplomatic and trade relations with Israel?
I speak in English. I have the same question, but I want to ask them to see why, because I think there is something between them. There is something, it's sure. So because of this thing between them, they are in silence. Because I think what happened in Gaza, if there is no interest between them, nobody should keep silence.
I'm asking the same questions myself, but maybe I might have part of the answer. We saw how there is ignorance, or why didn't we join South Africa in? And if we spoke with certain responsible people in the Arab countries, they say there's still a possibility to join them, to join South Africa. We saw something else. And when we carried out studies, we saw 30 Arab and Islamic countries discuss, and they showed readiness in this sphere, and some presented very high-level legal opinions. I do not know what is their position with regards to joining South Africa. We don't really know. We don't understand. We only understand one thing, that there are two countries, which is Jordan and Egypt, and since they have diplomatic relationships, they should be able to intervene, and they should, but they prefer to be mediators rather than carry out an active role. As for the other countries, we do not understand why they're not taking any position. Thank you. I'm a journalist at the United Nations. My question is for Dr. Salti. From a professional and medical point of view, you have seen the files of many injured people who came to Geneva. If we speak professionally about these cases, how can you classify them? I'm sorry, I wasn't here during the first part of this session. Maybe you mentioned this. But from a medical and professional point of view, how do you see these injuries of the people who came to Geneva? and how severe and dangerous are these injuries? I'm sorry if you have already spoken about this topic. From a doctor's point of view, when we see such injuries, really the hair on your skin stands up to see children having been subjected to these injuries. As the daughter of our sister Hiba, she had a broken arm with the external fixation in the hospital. Her hand was like this. What was her fault? From a medical point of view, there's no respect of the human life. There's no more respect to the life of either the elderly or the young or the child. They are all punished in the same way. What have they done? What are their faults? We don't know. God knows. Microphone, please. Microphone. Microphone.
Could you turn on your mic? Sorry. On behalf of the Organisation of European Islamic Centres, I wish to just address to the panel, do you think that this issue, what's happening in Gaza, in Palestine and Israel, do you think it's an Arab problem, or do you think it's an international community problem, given the fact that it's an ongoing problem for the last 75 years, and given the fact that the atrocities and the bloodshed that's been going without any remorse, without any accountability, without any arrest warrants being conducted to hold account to the criminals of crimes committed against humanity and colonization of Palestine. So in my belief that this is not an Arab problem, because the Arab world actually want peace, and they're advocating for peace, and that's what they've been doing for the last few months, negotiating peace, and these peace deals have failed time and time again. So what do you propose should be the solution?
Thank you. I agree with you. The weakness of the Arab has to do with what happened to Iraq. Look, Iraq was invaded based on lies. So the country is now completely torn apart, and so many people died, and so many people disappeared, and these are interventions that take place after 2011 had their toll in Libya, in Syria, in Yemen, and this weakened the Arabs, and therefore the problem is at the level of the international community. We're talking about international law. Our brothers and sisters in the friendly European countries, they said never again. But but we see it online, live on screen every minute. What they said never again is taking place again and again. We say 70% of the infrastructure has been destroyed, 95% of the services have been destroyed, 90% of medical infrastructures have been destroyed, more than 2 million people have been displaced, 450,000 in the north have no food and no assistance except that what is given to them by air, and that's not a long-term solution. And we have thousands of people who are living in the cold, in the desert, and do not even obtain the minimum of food, and this is genocide. This is genocide without doubt. And this is a violation of the Geneva Convention. All these are forced and forced displacement. There is a collective punishment, And there are hundreds of patents and cases that prove that this is genocide.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have to stop here. But thank you to all the speakers for their invaluable input, and thank you for all the attendees.